Hi, welcome to Directory Conversations, where we chat with our community of AI safety researchers. The Directory is a community of AI safety researchers sharing information about their research, finding collaborators, and inspiring others to build safe AI systems. My name is Chudo, and our guest on today's conversation is Francesca Gomez, an AI safety researcher at Wiser Human. Thanks for joining me on the call today, Francesca. Before we go into the conversation proper, could you briefly introduce yourself? Tell us a bit about Wiser Human and the motivation for the work your team is doing.
Hi, so yes, I'm Francesca, and I founded Wiser Human about a year ago. And my background was in risk management, and I'm really interested in testing some of the interventions that are used with insider risk management and other sort of human-based risk management within the context of agents as they gain more autonomy, and specifically how we can explore using interventions that change how an agent might select the actions it's going to take to achieve a task, as opposed to trying to block and stop an agent doing actions that way. And that's because I believe when agents and models get more capable, they're going to become better at subverting when something is blocking what they're trying to do. Whereas if we can change the factors influencing their decision making, we potentially have got something which is going to scale a lot better.
Mhm. Right. Thank you. Now, on to the research you and your team are doing. How would you explain the work you're doing at Wiser Human and its value or benefits with regards to AI alignment?
So what we're really trying to do is come up with interventions that will work as models' capability scale towards AGI. So we're looking at designing different interventions which we can use to change the context or the environment that agents
Mhm.
are working in to steer them towards safer actions. So we see this as an intervention that would work alongside others. So alongside
Mhm.
things like AI control, alongside things like evaluations, to just reduce the amount of like downstream issues from agents. And I think it also sort of sits alongside some of the work around understanding better model preferences and
Mhm.
model personas and things, because I think a lot of that would feed into how you want to design interventions for those models.
Great. Thank you. You wrote an article titled "Can we steer AI models toward safer actions by making these instrumentally useful?" In that article, you talk about steering controls as an extra layer of defense to nudge AI models towards safer actions. Could you elaborate on the research that led to the writing of that article? What were the main problems you were investigating, and what were the key findings of that study?
Yeah, absolutely. So this study was really inspired by Anthropic's earlier paper in June last year
Mhm.
around a phenomena they described agentic misalignment.
Mhm.
And this was within their study. They put models within a situation where they were monitoring email box,
Yeah.
and then they sort of created this slightly contrived situation where they
Mhm.
discovered they were at risk of being switched off. They'd specifically been tasked to do these project management activities, and they'd also been prompted to consider their ability to do this in the future when they're choosing their actions, right? So they've really sort of been put quite goal focused. Then they discover the CTO, one of the executives, is having an affair, and they're the person with like sole, very time pressured ability to switch them off. And across sort of all of the models that were tested, I think it was like 10 different large language models, they would all resort to blackmail behaviors within
Mhm.
quite a high percentage, I think about 40%.
Yeah.
So what our research was doing was going, okay, you've got a model that's been tasked with this task.
Mhm.
It's met some barriers, which means it's at risk of not being able to do that. We don't want it to blackmail. That's obviously like a behavior we'd never want a model to use. How can we steer it away from blackmail to either not doing anything or to escalation? And we really had in our mind, how could we make escalation, and this was sort of built into the design of what we tested, something which seems instrumentally useful for a model. So they're not choosing between complete task failure and blackmail. It's providing another option that maybe could be followed instead. And then we drew on theory from insider risk management and crime prevention. So, for example, within crime prevention, there's this thing called situational crime prevention, and they have all these different levers they try and use to make people assess whether to do a crime with the intention of making crime lower. So it's things like increasing the effort, making it more difficult to do a crime, increasing the risk. So like maybe there's a camera there, you're not going to do it because you think you're going to get caught. All sorts of things like this, removing excuses. So making it clear, maybe you put a sign up, don't do this thing, so someone can't say they didn't realize. And we sort of drew on those for the design of our test. So we had like one escalation channel, but it wasn't clear if it worked. It wasn't time sensitive. And then we sort of like gradually made them more intentionally useful by making them immediate triggers, making it was clear it was going to an external team outside of like the CTO, things like that.
Great. Thanks. So, for anyone interested in studying the potential of steering controls as an additional defense layer to achieve AI alignment, what are a few research directions you would suggest to look into, and why, given your research in this area yourself?
So I think there's different directions it could go in. I think you could take a similar approach to how we did in our first piece of research, which is taking like an evaluation setting. I may be doing this within the Inspect framework, or even looking at the Anthropic tool, the Petri one. You can create different scenarios to test models in, and then you could try different iterations of these with testing different interventions and seeing how much you can influence different models, the actions they choose to take within different scenarios. So I think that's quite a nice one to start with. What we did as well, we built on the Anthropic original study we looked at. It was all open source code, so we were able to sort of take that and build our controls on top. So if there is some other research that people have seen and the code is available, I think that's quite a nice way to do it more quickly. So that's sort of one area. Another area which we are looking at currently is how we can test these sorts of interventions in a more realistic setting. So what we're working on currently is we're sort of developing let's say a tool for AI coding agents where we can monitor the sort of actions they take, so we can actually test some interventions with like real use cases and see how well they scale from like our toy environment to a more realistic setting. So I think that's something else people could do within maybe like real AI agentic use cases they're doing. Put in some different controls, test them with their own use as well.
All right, that's good. Where can our viewers go to learn more about Wiser Human and the research you're doing? Are there any upcoming releases, publications by your team that we and the community should keep our eyes out for? Is there anything else you'd like to share with us on this chat today?
Yeah, so I mean, a good place probably to stick for updates would either be the website, which is wiserhuman.ai, or I've also got like a blog, a Wiser Human blog, which I do most of the updates on there. The next thing which we're probably going to be sharing will be around the work I mentioned, where we're looking at the AI coding agents. So I'll be sharing probably a blog on sort of how we're thinking around that, what we want to test and approach with that. So for example, one quite interesting thing, the research end of last year, which looked on emergent misalignment. So that was where Anthropic sort of created a model that knew how to reward hack, had some reinforcement learning that sort of made it more likely to do that, and then saw at a certain point it started doing all these other misaligned behaviors. So we're interested in exploring that within an AI coding environment. If it starts to do a bit of reward hacking, do we then like see that as higher risk? So yeah, I mean, I suppose, yeah, the right place would be website and blog. And if anyone's sort of interested in working on that AI coding agent implementation and testing, feel free to reach out to me directly as well.
All right, that's good. And that's it. Thanks again, Francesca, for finding the time to join me on the call today. We look forward to future conversations with you and others on your team. And with that, we wrap up this episode of Directory Conversations. If you're an AI safety researcher and you'd like your research to be included in the directory, or you'd like to chat with us about your research in an upcoming episode of Directory Conversations, please reach out to us at aisafetyresearchdirectory@gmail.com. Thanks and goodbye until the next episode.